Well, we got stuck between Fletcher and lunch, so we're going to try to get you to lunch on time. I know I see Bill Lister from Lister Consulting. He likes his 11:30 lunch, so we'll try to be on time.
Yeah.
We were asked to come in today and talk a little bit about incident investigation, and hopefully we can bring up a couple of new concepts. Like anything else, incident investigation is an evolving tool that we can use to try to eliminate recurrence of incidents and actually try to prevent them and be a little more proactive. So hopefully we can bring a couple new concepts here to the conference today and help you kind of understand how Matt and I approach these things. So go ahead. We both utilize a web-based incident reporting system. So what we've done here is just bulleted the types of incidents we have set up in our system, and that's Matt's. I'm not going to go through each one of them. You guys can read those. Injuries, property damage, those types of incidents. Okay, you can go to the next slide. We have a few more. We must have had a few more different types of things occur, but we utilize them for a lot of different things. So you guys will be provided with this presentation, so you'll be able to, if you want to email either one of us to ask what, anything in particular about a certain type, that's fine. Go ahead and do that. So, key information to collect in an incident. One of the things we tried to emphasize early on in my tenure at Ag Partners, which I worked for AGP and Ag Partners, they're easy to confuse, but is just getting basic facts written down. What was the temperature? What was the wind condition? Was it foggy? What day of the week was it? What time was the event? Try to keep any kind of opinions out of those. It's a box where we just bullet those facts that can ultimately help lead you to your corrective actions and your root cause analysis. Getting individual statements from employees or anybody involved. It's very important to get those as early on as possible so that memory loss doesn't come in, or trying to think of different angles. If you're involved in something, you're immediately thinking, what am I going to tell? What am I going to tell my boss, or what am I going to tell him? Try to get these individual statements early on. Also try to get them from individuals, not groups. Some people might find that a little intimidating, so just be aware of that and let them know that what you're after is just trying to prevent recurrence. Pictures, obviously, pictures, as they say 1,000 words, so get a lot of pictures. A lot of times in our incidents, I'll see some poor quality pictures, so take pictures that are close-ups, take some that are back-up. Sometimes you get a picture, it's so close you can't even tell what the issue is. So take a lot of pictures. Try to reenact the event. That's one thing we do if you can safely do it. Get the individuals involved or other individuals to try to reenact what happened. I'm a visual learner, so I like to see the pictures and see what occurred in order for me to understand what happened and try to help prevent recurrence. Root cause analysis. One of the important components of any incident investigation is root cause analysis. There's a lot of different methodologies out there. We happen to use the 5 whys, and what that's about is asking enough questions to get to a deeper understanding of what caused the incident. There's fishbone. I know that's what Matt uses. Pareto, etc. There's a lot of them out there. A successful root cause analysis and incident investigation is defined as near certain prevention of recurrence. So if you get down to the root causes well enough and implement corrective actions, you can near certainly prevent the incident from recurring. Use your root cause data. If you see a root cause, and our system's able to track our root causes and provide reports, if you see a root cause that's occurring over and over again, you may have a problem. You do have a problem. We had a meeting yesterday where we looked at root causes of incidents, and one particular company had a root cause that was called employee was unaware of hazards, and that was by far the one that was used the most. Number one, it's pretty easy to use that one. You can say that, and the key question is why? Why are they not aware of the hazards? So that's the part you have to
Hey,
get
Corey,
down to.
On
Go
that
ahead,
one,
Matt.
if you mind, just speaking in that kind of a situation, if the employee's not aware, when in a 5 why scenario, you want to ask, so why is the employee not aware? It's probably not because the employee's dumb. It's probably not because the employee doesn't care, but it is possible that we didn't teach the employee about the hazard. And that's the kind of information you want to really get to if you're going to prevent the accident from occurring or from recurring.
Yeah. As the bullet point says, it may be a training gap. It may be a lack of enforcement. You kind of have to find out what role you play in the incident. It's very easy to stop a root cause analysis after you find 1 or 2 root causes and say, yeah, we figured out the problem, and just go on from there. But if you dig deep enough, there's generally always a management or a systematic failure in there that you can identify and you can help improve. Yeah, there are incidents where employees make mistakes, but there's usually a reason behind that. So dig a little deeper, I guess, is the point on that. Which is worse? This is where I need your participation. This is a pretty tame crowd. I was in Davenport, Iowa with my wife's family last week, and Donald Trump happened to be in town, so I thought I'd go to the speech. That was a pretty rowdy crew. You guys are pretty tame. So which is, any volunteers tell me what they think is worse, a recordable injury or a near miss?
In terms of the numbers, near miss is worse because you're going to have more near misses than recordables. But in terms of injury, obviously recordable injury.
So what he said was, in terms of frequency, it'd be the near miss. In terms of severity, it'd be the recordable. Go on to the next slide. So here's the rest of the story. Let's talk about, these are actual incidents that we've had. The recordable injury was a minor eye irritation that burned for a short period of time, got to an eye doctor. They had flushed it out very well, so by the time they even got to the eye doctor, the irritation had pretty well stopped. The eye doctor did prescribe an antibiotic drop or ointment, which caused it to be a recordable injury. It's fairly minor, but they did that out of an abundance of caution. Number 2, a near miss where we had an individual get on the cone of a bin bottom that had some grain and dust in the bottom. They were cleaning that out, and we had a procedure in place where you stay at the top of the cone and you're tied off with a positioning device so you cannot get down into that cone. He decided to circumvent that rule, and because we had done it differently in the past. Somebody opened a slide on the bottom into a conveyor, and he slipped down and started to fall. Luckily, they were able to radio, get that stopped. No injuries, nothing like that, but the guy definitely could have had a severe injury. If you want to go to the next slide. Here's pictures of that. It's kind of hard to see the slope, but that's an aeration tube going down to the opening where this feeds into a spout and a conveyor. And you can see on the second picture there, the slide gate is open. So that's what happened. They opened the slide and the material started to flow, and he started to flow with it. Next slide. This was what was at the bottom of that cone bottom bin. So had he got that 1 foot, I think his foot could have fit through that slide. And I don't know the distance there, it's 3 or 4 feet. He definitely could have got his foot down in that conveyor. So now, as far as severity, would you change your opinion? No? That's what we run into a lot. For me, I can tell you as a safety person, I lost a lot more sleep over this incident, the near miss, than I did over the recordable. Because there was a potential for a very severe injury, even fatality in that. So conventional thinking, for too long, I think we've based our investigation incidents, we've based the reaction on the actual outcome versus the potential outcome. And I guess that's what I'm hoping we can continue to change, is looking closer at the incidents so that you look at that potential. That particular near miss that we had, only 3 people could be tied off to the devices, and we just so happened to have 4 people. Usually we're not long help, but in that case we were. And he decided, since there wasn't 4 tie-offs, that he wasn't just going to let the other 3 do all the work. So at this point, we'll let Matt come up and talk a little bit about the safety severity pyramid and SIFs.
So the picture here, this is, a lot of safety professionals have seen this at some point in time or another, and I'll say, for anyone who knows these words, I'm not here to argue Heinrich's principles with anyone, but this picture gives us a good image. If you look at the top of the pyramid, that's the most severe injury out there, right? It's fatality. It's as bad as it can get. We've lost somebody. A family has lost somebody. And, in general, the numbers of fatalities out there are smaller than the next rung on this, or the next level on this pyramid, which are serious injuries. At JD High School, we think about serious injuries as being life-threatening, or life-threatening and also life-altering. If you've got an injury where somebody has some kind of a long-term health effect as a result of it or missed a large amount of time, those are serious injuries to us. Below that, there's some larger number of OSHA recordable injuries or first aid only injuries where somebody gets hurt. It might be minor, kind of like the recordable Corey talked about. And then below that, there's this broader number of near misses that you talk about that occur every day. That are the way I try and the way we work with our folks on near misses is you kind of look up. If you look up and you say I could have got hurt but didn't, that's a near miss to us. There was some kind of a physical situation that if something had gone just even slightly differently, I could have gotten hurt. And to us, we're really working to encourage our people to report those. And then below those are the hazards that cause all of those things to occur. So you have this, the base, there's this large number of hazards, a smaller number of near misses, smaller number of OSHA recordables, and up to the top of the pyramid. DECRA Insight, who convened a group of people, I think a couple of the participants are in this room right now. I believe Cargill and ADM, I think, were involved in this. They're great at data collection. They have broad data sets where they've looked at their whole sets of incidents. And they came to a number that 21% of these lower level incidents could have led to a serious injury or fatality. And so that's really important, right? There's different kinds of near misses. There's near misses that could cause you to stub a toe, or there's a near miss that could have, if something had gone a little bit differently, could have caused a fatality. And that's pretty important information as you think about that. That's 1 out of 5. So there's a large number of potential hazards out there where something goes wrong could lead to a serious injury or fatality. Is that next? Or do I have a button here, or do I need to go to you? Oh, okay. I'll try and drive it myself. Let's see, wait. So what we're teaching our people at JD High School and everyone else is, or in a lot of other places, we want to find the 21% because what those really are uncontrolled high risks. There's a high risk out there, and really if something had gone just slightly different, you could have had a very severe injury. And so we want to get our facilities in the habit, or really in the mode of finding them before someone gets hurt. And so how do you find them, though? That's the hard part. And there's a few different ways. One of the most valuable ones to us is near miss and property damage reporting. I mean, you stand the most success if you really get a vision on what's going on out in your facilities. And if you can get to a culture where people are encouraged to and are comfortable are reporting near misses and are reporting property damage. If a guy bumps into something with a forklift, does he report that, or does he go on and maybe hope you don't see the dent in the pallet rack? You need to be getting this information out of people. So near miss, property damage reporting, hazard reporting. Some of the other things that we get them through are safety suggestions, or really just a guy walking around a facility looks up and says, "Hey, I think we should do this different because I see a risk there." And then there's other proactive things, inspections and auditing, where we're actively going out, walking around plants looking for hazards. There's all of these different ways where you can find this information, but what you want to be really doing is looking out for when these things occur, have an eye to how bad could the injury have been. I try and bring people through that exercise, and it's not an exercise of, you know what, there was a mosquito and he was on the wall, and mosquitoes, they can carry malaria in certain parts of the world, so this really could have been a fatality if I'd been eaten by a big mosquito. If I'm bitten by a mosquito. That's not what we're looking for, but what we are looking for is just realistically, how bad can the injury be? Fall from height, fall from 10 feet, how bad could that injury be? Well, that can be a fatality. So just and going through that process with people, with individuals, it raises their awareness of risk. And so we're finding more and more success in getting people to bring those situations to light. And then what do you do with them? At that point, once you've brought that risky situation to light, in the best world, and what we coach our people to do is treat that as if the injury had occurred, as seriously as if the injury had occurred. And hopefully we'll prevent it from happening. We have these cultural hurdles right here, and I think they're pretty natural. What you're asking people to do to some extent is rat out themselves or rat out other people. People don't want to do that. It's just natural. People don't want to look bad. And that manifests itself in a whole bunch of different ways. These are actual ways I see it across our facilities is, people don't want to look for problems because if they find them, they're turning themselves in to some degree, or they're turning somebody in about a problem, and also maybe they're making more work for themselves. A lot of times people don't want to report near misses. And as you get down into it, what's really going on is defensiveness with individuals. And so to get past that, you have to create an environment where it's safe and appropriate to do it. Or that you need to convince people that you really want that information. And you also need to convince them that once they bring that information to you, you're going to do something with it. And as you do that, you establish a level of trust with your employees, and you end up learning an awful lot of things as you go along your site walks. The best story I have about defensiveness in my own career is me. Job previous to mine, I worked for the Aaron's Company in Auburn, Nebraska. If anybody knows who they are, they're known for snow blowers, but in Auburn we made outdoor power equipment, lawnmowers, log splitters, things like that. And I was the safety engineer at the facility. We had a guy from corporate coming in to visit, and he'd heard I was good. And I'm all happy about that he'd heard I was good. He told me he'd heard I was good, and we start walking around the facility, and he's immediately finding hazards, one after another. Boom, boom, boom. We don't get very far. One after another, one after another, one after another, one after another. And I'm feeling like a punching bag. And I finally, when he says, identified one, I say to the vice president of the company that that's way better than the plant you walk around in every day. I said that, right? And he stops, and he was doing all of this for a purpose. And he stopped and he says, you can't get defensive. So really he was trying to provoke that reaction in me is what he was doing. But his message to me is, we're about solutions. I'm going to evaluate you on your ability to find problems and help us fix them. That's what I'm going to gauge how good you are. And that was a great lesson that he taught me that day. I didn't push him again. I figured I had one mulligan on that, and he let me have it, and I didn't push him from that time on. But what all this leads to is poor incident investigations, and where you're not really looking that hard at an incident, and really, if something happens at your facility, what's the easiest thing to blame? The easiest thing to blame, employee messed up, right? That's the easiest thing. And so if people are defensive and they don't want to really look at a situation and they don't want to talk about what really happened, that leads you to blaming the easiest target. Employee messed up, you never get to a root cause. And I'll tell you, when I look at root cause analyses that come back from our teams, if we get to the employee messed up, Bob and Rick back there can guarantee I'm always asking, well, have you asked any more whys? And you're going to have to really demonstrate to me that the employee did mess up. And sometimes that does happen, but a lot of times what happens is, as Corey pointed to, there's some ownership that we have somewhere in our training. We may say we expected the employee to follow procedure X, but okay, well, you expect that. You're saying you expect it. Well, how many times you check? You ever go out and check to see if they're following it? Well, no. Well, guess what? You don't expect it if you're not checking on it, right? And so hopefully that mindset in root cause analysis leads us to some things procedurally or from a manager standpoint that we can fix and prevent the injuries from happening. Did I get this? Right button? I'm trying. There we go. So once we find them, what do we do? A lot of people have seen these images in different ways. Anybody seen something like this before? It's called the hierarchy of controls. If you start at the top of this pyramid, what this pyramid's meant to show is these items at the top. As you move down the pyramid, they're less effective of controls. And so, the best thing you can do is completely remove the hazard from the picture. And an example that we have of that in our company is we looked up at our injuries in the last, that's actually one of the first things that happened when I got to JD High School. We were looking through our injuries, and noted, wow, we have a lot of things happening with drivers. And then, okay, we had 1, 2, 3, 4 injuries over the last 5 years of truck drivers who are injured tarping or putting tarps on their trucks. And you've got this big long handle, it's manual tarping, you're trying to crank a handle and hold on to it with something else. But what's really going on with that tarp is the guy doesn't have so much control. You've got this long bar that weighs somewhere around 80 pounds or more. You get to the end of the truck and you bring the tarp over down, well, gravity takes over. And really what's going on is a controlled fall, and you got a guy with his shoulder trying to catch that thing as he goes. We had a couple of really bad shoulders and injuries that resulted in series of surgeries, not just one surgery, so clearly severe injuries. But so what do? You put automatic tarps on your trucks. If you do that, you completely eliminated the risk. So that's one of the best controls you can put in place. Other things you can do is substitute. Sometimes if the best example that I can think of is with a chemical. You using a chemical, that chemical might be hazardous. You may have something or that can cause skin irritation, say. This has physically happened to us, but maybe you can exchange that chemical for something else that still allows you, for in our case, make the right dairy feed. Engineering controls, putting guards in place, barriers in place. And then administrative controls, rules and procedures. That's what administrative controls are. I'm going to put rules in place for you to follow. And then below that, individuals' behaviors. And there at the bottom is PPE. And one thing I just want to get across here is PPE is one of the first things everybody does, but it's actually one of the least effective things you can do because from a conceptual standpoint anyway, you're saying, all right, I'm going to let you touch the hazard, but you're going to wear this and maybe it won't be as bad. It's not, nobody's really doing that on purpose, but from a functional standpoint, that is what's happening. So what we're trying to do in our company is guide people. We've divided the solutions into 3 groups, and we're not unique in this. We want to get our severe or incidents with SIF potential or SIFs themselves, corrective actions put in place. We want to raise them up into level 1 on this picture. Feel like if we've done that, we've actually reduced risk. If we have administrative controls in place, we want to have more than one in place, and we want to not rely on PPE unless we absolutely have to. So that's what our strategy is in our incident investigations, and that all comes from the investigation process. You get that information from the investigation process. So now I just want to give you a case study. This is real. These are real photographs from a facility in Augusta, Maine. And we had a severe injury there January before last. It's a snowy day. It's Augusta, Maine. It gets cold up there. Every once in a while I get these texts from guys that show a picture of their dashboard cam that says 32 degrees below zero, and they're not joking. These guys deal with cold weather beyond anything that I ever want to deal with, except on a one-day visit, right? But we have this facility, and you can see a truck, and the driver gets out of the truck, and he walks into this exit door, which is kind of right there in the middle of the picture, exit door, entrance door, and he's going into the office. So, and that you can't really see it in the picture, but there's a downward slope just coming off of this exit or entrance there. Well, what we had was our employee walked out this blue door, and he walked this path that's along the black line there, and he slipped on ice, and he slipped backwards, and kind of in the shock of doing that, the hard hat comes off, and he banged his head on the concrete, and this was a serious injury. He fractured his skull, and he had bleeding to the brain, and to this day, he's not all the way better. To this day, this individual can't smell or taste. He is all the way back at work, but so a serious injury by any account. So just basic facts. It's Augusta, Maine. I'll say it over and over. Several feet of snow in the week prior, massive amounts of snow, and a heavy snowstorm going on that day. In addition to that, they've had freezing and thawing, so snow's melting, and then it's over the course of the day, and it's running across wherever the water drains. And the worker came out the door, he slipped on the ice, hits the concrete wall. If you look at the factor zone, this is the information you got to get out of the investigation. You got to kind of look at what was going on. So like Corey mentioned, we just basic facts. Weather was terrible, and it's not that we were in a situation where employees weren't trying to keep the walk clean. It was they physically couldn't keep up with it. And one of the things going on is the mill was really busy. The weather's bad, but you know what? The cows who we feed, they still have to eat. We still need to make feed. We need to get feed into trucks and get it out to them. And that had been slowing down, so our mill's under a lot of pressure. Physically, you've got a sloped layout. One thing that I didn't mention from the pictures is meltwater from two sources actually went across that area where the person was walking. And one thing our investigator did, and he just took a step back and thought about it and just said, okay, we got water going across there. Well, what's an exit? I mean, an exit's a spot where we are asking people to walk, right? So just think about that. I've got drainage going through this spot that's purpose is to have somebody walk through. So I've actually invited somebody into this hazard. Now, nobody did this on purpose, but in your investigation, this is kind of what you got to get to. And but that's what we did. And we had really high production demands. The mill was extremely busy. Whose job was it to keep the walkway clean? That's one of our basic obligations under OSHA, right? Safe walkways and safe working surfaces. Whose job was that? Well, we're all hands on deck. It's everybody's job. Well, what happens when something is everybody's job? It's nobody's job, and that's exactly what happened. And then the last bullet here is heartbreaking. When you get to talking to people at the facility, you talk to a couple of guys like, yeah, I slipped there before. Well, what's that? Remember, that's a near miss, right? Those are near misses. If we had been in the past paying good attention to near misses, that had SIF potential. This clearly has SIF potential, right? We had a dead hit on the SIF. If we'd have been doing that, if we'd been paying attention to them, if we put corrective actions in place, Jeff would be able to smell and taste today. So this isn't some abstract kind of a idea. I mean, this is real. And so I use this example of an investigation an awful lot, training our people for a couple reasons. One, it's, here's how, you didn't intend for any of this to happen, but you have to step back and kind of look at it this way, particularly that point about entrances and exits. Those are places you're inviting people to walk and stand. Are they clear? Are they safe? But that's heartbreaking, right? Now that we think about it, we slipped before. What that says is we knew the hazard was here and we didn't do anything about it. And that's not malicious, right? These are all very good guys that we're talking about, very good people. But that's the reality, and that's heartbreaking. So what did we do, though? Out here in Augusta, immediately became somebody's job to keep that thing clear. We put a piece of yellow paint, we put some yellow paint down on the ground. And the first response from the plant manager is, well, that's not going to help us in the snow. And it's like, well, if you can't see the paint, maybe you need to shovel the snow, And it's just a mindset change, really. I'm being a little sarcastic and cute about it, but he went, oh, yeah, that's right. And again, he's a good guy. This is a quality, solid plant manager, but just wasn't thinking in these terms. Now salt and sand right at the exit door. You already saw it in the picture, but then it became somebody's job every day and in heavy weather on an hourly basis to go out and check, make sure the walkway was okay. So that got us through the winter. And then permanent, how do we fix the problem? Rerouted the meltwater, not through the exit anymore, and then reconfigured the exit. Here's what it looks like now. So this is, we put a walkway in place where we're going over this low spots. We've removed the low spot from the picture, got a safe walkway across to some stairs where people can walk out of it. So this is a situation, do we need a platform? Well, OSHA might say not really, but for our physical situation we do. And then you can't really see it in the picture, but rerouted some water drainage. And I wanted to go back to that point of temporary versus permanent corrective actions. The temporary actions help deal with the hazard right now, because what you really don't want is that second injury happening after you already know about it while you're taking a couple of months for capital to put a real level 1 control in place. So that's us, and I think this is you from here. Yeah. All right? Yep. There you go.
So Matt mentioned the hierarchy of controls, and that is very important. I guess one of the things that I want to make sure that in your incidents you don't forget about the cultural piece as well, because it's easy to engineer something out, but hopefully people learn a lesson, a human lesson as well. The recordable eye incident, if you remember that, the corrective action, what happened there was they purged the line with air at the end of an unload process, and the fitting failed, which caused the hose to come off and some chemical sprayed. The guy had safety glasses on, but not goggles or any face shield because he wasn't actually handling the chemical. So they changed the fittings to more stout fittings. They actually turned the air pressure down after they did some investigating on what pressure should be used for the purge. They did all the engineering and hierarchy of controls, corrective actions in that case. They also made some PPE changes, requirement changes. But they also took some time and did an egg drop exercise. The location manager did this on his own, and what he did was he challenged two teams kind of to a competition and said, I'm going to take your eggs up on top of the elevator and drop them off, and whoever can protect their egg is going to be the winner. So you might have to hit play down there. So there he is up on top of the, actually on a catwalk between two bins, and you'll took about 30 minutes to an hour, I think, to do their engineering on these. And this was one that was just coated with foam padding, and they thought they could protect the egg with just padding. Well, there was a result of that one. The other crew decided to use a parachute concept, which actually worked effectively. So at the end of that exercise, and I take no credit for this because I was not a part of it, at the end of this exercise, they were able to sit down and the location manager said, look what you guys did, the effort you went to protect this egg. He said, that's what we've got to learn. This facility had gone over 500,000 hours without a recordable. So they had a very good record, and the guys were a little disappointed that they'd had a recordable. So this was kind of their exercise at the end of that. They did all the hierarchy of controls, but they also had a cultural piece. And now I know that when they get ready to do a non-routine task or start their day, that a lot of times they're talking about protecting the egg and looking out for each other. One of the other questions is, how do you share and communicate your incidents? It's very important, especially in our industry where it may be the springtime of the year where we're doing a lot of agronomy operations, putting on fertilizer, handling chemicals. And there's a lot of locations doing that, a lot of people doing it. So if there's an incident or something that occurs at one location, it's very likely that there are other people that day that are actually facing that same risk. As Matt mentioned, we use Decra Insight, formerly RCI, as a web-based system, and when we put an incident in, all of our location managers get an immediate alert once that incident is saved. So they can see what happened at the other location and communicate that to their people. Corrective actions are reactive in nature, but can become proactive if you utilize it like this. So yes, it was a reaction to this incident at this location, but if the information is given to other locations, they can take the proactive approach to fix the problem before something happens. So just wanted to get that concept across. Change your culture as well. We're utilizing incident reporting in a little different fashion. We have what we call a proactive incident at Ag Partners. Rather than a property damage or injury or something that's always a negative consequence, we've asked our guys to, it's a very simple incident, and they put in the first box is, what did you notice that was unsafe, whether it was a behavior or a condition? And the second box is, what did you do about it? How did you correct it? So get in the habit of implementing corrective actions before an incident rather than after. We also do plant inspection variances, and we implement corrective actions for those based on what we see in plant inspections. And Matt touched on near-miss reporting. So be proactive and change your culture with incident reporting. Don't just use it as a tool after something negative happens. Here's an example of a proactive incident that we had recently. We had a facility where location leader, they were going to do a top entry. And we talked about grain quality earlier this morning. And I don't know that there was a quality issue in this case, but the safest way to approach this bin entry and do what they needed to do was to come in from the top. And so they had a tripod, a boatswain's chair, and a winch to lower the employee down in there. At this particular facility, they don't do that very often, very rarely. So as they were getting ready to do it, they were kind of uncomfortable, I guess, with their knowledge base on how to do it safely. So we had another facility that does them probably daily, if not at least a couple times a week, where we utilize the tripod winch. So what he did was he sent his crew over to that facility, which is about a 45-minute drive. It's a pretty significant time commitment. And they sat down with their crew and went through how they safely use this thing, and they practiced. And then came back to their facility and did their entry. Now for me, that was an awesome proactive incident, because as soon as that was saved, it went to the rest of the location managers. And I'm sure there's some of them that thought, wow, that's a pretty good, exercise and a pretty good investment of time. I didn't even know we could do that. We got things to do. So to me, that was an awesome culture-setting proactive incident. And when those are shared amongst your team, it just reinforces doing the right things and the safe things. A few best practices, red flags that you want to look for in incident reporting. We do, in Iowa at least, all of our facilities are in Iowa, we do have post-incident drug screening. And make sure your protocol is very clear on that, and that it follows state and federal regulations. I don't know if Jess is going to touch on this tomorrow, but there's some new stuff out there from OSHA on unreasonable testing. So you have to be very cautious that if somebody gets stung by a bee and they have a recordable incident because of that, that's not really anything you can question their sobriety or whatever you want to say on. So you have to be careful not to do unreasonable testing. And follow your protocol every time. I get calls frequently that says, well, do we need to test this guy? Well, does it meet the criteria? Then yes, we have to be consistent. And be skeptical without showing skepticism. If you're kind of your lead investigator for your company, work comp does get abused at times, and so you have to be cognizant of that. If you have suspicions, they're very hard to prove sometimes, but you do need to at least share that. For me, I would share it with our insurance rep, that we turn it into, hey, here's what I think about this. It doesn't hurt to let them know that, because they'll approach that and make sure that they vet that out. Don't be afraid to share those concerns with your human resource department as well. Also remember, I don't know if we still have Eric in here, but these incident reports can become legal documents. So be very careful on how you word them and make sure that they're clear and that they contain the information you need. Sometimes you don't want to put too much information in there. Just remember that they could become legal documents. In summary, don't look at incident reporting as just that mandatory thing you do after a negative incident when bad things happen. It can be a very valuable tool if you utilize it. So, Matt, any other comments?
The thing I'd kind of throw in to reiterate, what you're talking about at the end, the reports can become legal documents, but even beyond that, as you're gathering information, it's really important to differentiate between what you know, the facts that you know, and things that you're speculating to do. A lot of times, people without even trying will, as they're gathering information, will speculate, and they're not necessarily doing it on purpose, but they're kind of, at that point, they're telling a narrative. And you need to be able to really differentiate the facts from opinions, because sometimes sometimes those two things differ. Probably half the time they differ.